Hello, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome all on behalf of Team Avtar to the panel discussion What It Takes to Be a Best Company for Women in India. I'm Divya Kumar and I'll be the host for today's evening. As we start, here are a few hygiene checks for seamless virtual experience. Please close all your other applications on your computer and log out to the organization's VPN to conserve internet bandwidth. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are the most relevant in our times. We foresee how the business case for DEI will be soon replaced by the risk case. Companies will ensure DEI processes to mitigate risk. Across the globe, the awareness, the sensitization, and the training around diversity and inclusion will become more critical aspect of company culture and not just a checkbox in a box item. In today's panel discussion, we have eminent leaders who are pioneers in driving the DEI agenda in their organization. We welcome Ms. Jennifer Manchikanti, Associate Director for Diversity, Equity and Inclusiveness at EY Global Delivery Services. She is involved in design, development, and implementation of DEI programs, as well as organizational leadership on equity, diversity, and inclusion policies and practices for the organization. The next speaker is Ms. Shantia Maria, Director, Diversity and Inclusion and CSR Target India, an extension of US retailer Target headquarters operations. In this role, Shanti is responsible for creating actionable strategies to create ripple effect for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also give back meaningfully to the communities that Target operates in. Next, we have Ms. Preeti Singh, Senior Vice President, People and Compatibility, South Asia at MasterCard. She is recognized for driving high performance strategies for organizations effectively rapidly evolving business. She has led business transformation and enabled service growth and efficiency solutions across different industries. Finally, we have Priyanka Chaudhary, Talent Acquisition Head for Citibank, OMT, and Citi South Asia for Citibank. Priyanka joined Citigroup in 2018 as the Head of Talent Acquisition South Asia, leading recruitment for campus and lateral hiring across franchise, legal vehicles, and all product lines, institutional client group, global consumer bank, enterprise OMT, and global functions. With 26 years of overall experience, diversity and inclusion has been a cornerstone of Priyanka's career as she developed effective programs and initiatives to build diverse workforce across organizations she worked for. The moderator for today's panel discussion is Mr. Karthik Egamra, Executive Vice President and Director, DEI Solutions at Avtar. A diversity and inclusion specialist who has completed several seminar projects successfully for various organizations, an MBA with over 19 years of experience in business analysis, talent strategy, and workforce diversity consulting. Karthik has devised flexible working policies and created diversity-ready workplaces for over 500 Fortune companies. Dear participants, please share any questions or clarification you may have for the panelists in the Q&A window. It's over to you, Mr. Karthik.
Thank you, Divya. Thanks for the nice introduction. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Avtar, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this panel discussion today on the topic of what it takes to be a best company for women. As you all know that Avtar conducts in partnership Ceramount, India's largest diversity, equity, and inclusion study. It's benchmarking study, the best companies for women. The vision and the objective of this company is to see how we can actually accelerate the gender balance in the workplace. How can we have more diversity, and specifically with respect to gender, looking at how we can have more women representation in the workforce, right? So that's one key vision of the study. We are also looking at to ensure that we're able to reach the objective, the ability to building capability within the organizations to have inclusiveness. inclusive workplaces for not just for women, but for all. This is actually the vision of the purpose of the study. What we have also seen, the study was actually launched in 2016, and we're happy to inform that when we launched the study in 2016, almost 6 years back, the representation of women in the 100 best companies was around 25%. In the last 6 years, now 2021, when we completed the study the last year, but the representation has actually increased to 35%, a remarkable 10% jump. What it really says is, it really looks at how we are able to really have a complete focus in terms of having a serious commitment, intent, and purpose. If we can do that, we can really make a big change. And that is what we are all going to talk about. How companies can really look at making those change in terms of their policies, in terms of the practices, in terms of the work culture, how we can ensure that we can create this beautiful, inclusive workplace for all. And today what we have is an amazing set of leaders from the best companies that are there, and some of the topmost companies in India, which are really spearheading the entire DI journey, right? And it's my pleasure to welcome Jennifer, Preeti, Priyanka, and Shanti. And it's an honor to host you, to be your host this evening. We are really looking forward to some very interesting insights from you, your own personal journey, but also the work that is each one of your companies actually doing this. And in fact, that is going to be the key takeaway for us. How do we build this workplace, which can be, when we talk about making the workplace best companies for women, ultimately what we have seen through the study and through various other research that we see, it is also just not for women, it is for men as well, right? And that is something that we are also seeing through the various measures that we really look at to assess companies. And this is hopefully going to be very interesting and a lot of learning for each one of us. With that, what I would really like to do is, request each one of you just to share a quick brief thought in terms of what you think about diversity, your own personal passion with respect to on the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would request Jennifer to start. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Karthik. I think I often say this, I'm one of those very few people who are blessed enough to say that, my personal purpose and my professional purpose are in complete alignment. And I think when you're in the zone like that, that's your sweet spot, right? You're able to create the maximum impact. You're able to bring your best self to work and everything else that you do. So being a practitioner in the DE&I space is totally something that makes Monday mornings exciting. It's something I love. I'm able to bring my passion to work. And I think the other interesting thing for me, when I first started off working in the diversity, equity, and inclusiveness space, I realized very quickly that the DE&I world is small, but the amount of collaboration and sharing that happens, I don't think I've seen that in any other space. We're really, very uniquely, I think, set up in such a way where we're able to celebrate each other's successes, we're able to spur each other on, we're able to inspire each other on our progress. And I think, the best companies for women, the whole forum, the platform, the application itself has beautifully brought that together as well. Thanks, Karthik.
No, thank you, Jennifer. The one point that you said is the collaboration, right? In fact, the best company study is all about collaboration. All those companies coming together, actually sharing some of your best practices, data, and therefore we are also able to learn from each other. I think you beautifully said that collaboration, and the study is all about the collaboration that we really want to make it happen. Preeti, you had the HR for the MasterCard, and there is this much for you. I think it's also just beyond the diversity, equity, and inclusion. But your thoughts on how it is actually the diversity, equity, and inclusion is impacting the entire HR engagement. And I'm also going to talk to you about beyond. the employee engagement, Preeti, right? But
Yeah.
over to you to share your initial thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karthik, for inviting me for the session. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to talk about some of it. For me, diversity is like all things that make us both similar and different, things that we can see and we cannot see. And equity is more important than anything else. And it's come to existence in the last three quarters, which is most about examining and adjusting systems that ensure that diversity and inclusion are embedded into the way that we run our organizations today. For me, the inclusion is a skill set, right? One that allows the leaders to build and keep the diverse teams together. Now at MasterCard, amongst various things, our focus has been around three large areas: people, society, and pillar. People is like our people as in our colleagues at MasterCard, and we have immense number of programs under the platform or a flagship of a program called Urja that is around talent acquisition, management development. We have women internship program, supporting to the family building programs. That's about people that we have at MasterCard. What is Karthik was for us is very, very interesting for us is that we've taken the diversity beyond our people. So what we have as another pillar is market. We do want to believe that we need to help the market and society at large to become more inclusive rather than driving a corporate agenda only. So example, from a market perspective, we kind of have been looking at our product. We are a network company, and we are, we're not a cards company for that matter. We're into network platforms. So what we've kind of looked at is that how can we really help women that handle about 85% of everyday expenditure, and that has an impact on businesses across the globe. How can we really help them become financially aware of that? How can we include them as part of the journey to financial inclusion? And we kind of ensure that they're well aware of it. We've kind of have partnered with USAID to advance women economic opportunities to foster a very inclusive digital economy through a number of efforts. So educating them as, there's a project called Project Kirana for women that we've launched, and this is for entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, to help them understand the financial literacy, how they can run their businesses. And we're working very closely with the banks and also the partners where they can get the loans and to manage their entrepreneurial venture. In that same context of society, where we kind of third pillar is that we committed as MasterCard 250 crores, which is $33 million over next 5 years to really reboot the MSME segment, so the middle and the small, medium-sized enterprise segment, to really ensure that we are providing them the catalytic inputs to operate to the growth-oriented business. And that's not only limited to credit or know-how or value-add services, that we're supporting them in meeting the new norms of safety and health protection, but in a way it is kind of helping the society at large, in women empowerment enterprises to unlock the economic potential. So you're not only leaning on the corporate houses or the multinational organization or the workplaces, but we're seeing that women can also contribute to the larger economy, being independent, financially independent, and running onto their own enterprises. So that's some of the things that we're doing, Karthik.
Thank you, Preeti. I think there is some great amount of work that is happening at MasterCard and beyond the workplace. And I think that is what we're also seeing, the entire aspect of diversity actually, just not looking at within, but also externally, Preeti. So I'd like to hear from you more on that when we come again, after we hear from others. Priyanka, you head the talent acquisition. And when you talk about diversity, right, it's always the talent acquisition is a very toughest part, right? And and specifically, we're looking at gender and also beyond the aspect of gender, right? And Priyanka, your initial thoughts on diversity, the way that your approach, that you would like to approach, or you're approaching diversity, Priyanka.
Good evening, Karthik. Good evening, ladies. Happy to be a part of this session. I'll try making my response very brief. After 2 decades of working in the D&I space, I don't think my sentiment on D&I has changed at all, not a bit. And very simply put, for me, I think D&I is a very sincere commitment to creating a workplace where everyone can show up to work as their true, authentic, and whole selves, knowing that the contributions will be judged solely on their merits and their voices will always be heard. I know it's a very simple statement to put out my sentiment on D&I, but it truly is that. Whether it be gender, age, differently abled, or any other form of diversity, I think embracing everyone's differences is key. So I'm trying to make my answer very short because I know we've just begun the session. In interest of time, you should hear every perspective. And that will be my bit on inclusivity as I stop my answer now.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Priyanka. I think you set the tone for today's discussion. We would love to hear as many views as possible. So thank you so much, Priyanka. Shanti, over to you. Your initial thoughts, please, Shanti.
Sure. Thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Team Avtar, for inviting all of us to share our journeys and our perspectives. Karthik, for me, DEI, like Jennifer mentioned, is very aligned to my personal values and of fairness and being able to provide fair opportunities. So my personal motivation is that today I'm in a role that gives me the privilege and also the responsibility to make it a more inclusive place for women or for all other genders or for different dimensions, right? Growing up, I did not have too many resources and choices. And I definitely don't want young girls to feel the same way that I felt growing up. So that's my personal drive and my personal motivation. And I think for me, D, E, and I are three different dimensions to the same picture, right? Diversity is, who are you bringing in the room? Are you seeing different dimensions in the room? Are you seeing men, women, persons with disabilities, everybody in the room? I is who is participating in that conversation in the room. It's not just about filling the room with different dimensions. It's also about allowing inclusive conversations. And equity is who has the power in the room. Is it distributed only to one particular section, or is it equitably distributed? So those three different pillars, right? The balance of all of that is going to create that inclusive culture for our organizations.
Yeah, thank you, Shanti. I think you mentioned beautifully. I think Preeti also talked about it, the aspect of equity. And today, what we see for the diversity and inclusion to work, equity is sort of the bridge that is really going to make that happen. That without equity, is really difficult to ensure that we have the diversity as well, and ensure that the inclusion is there to empower the diversity that we have in the workplace. So thank you, Shanti, for that. Now I'd like to go to Jennifer. Jennifer, I think the fundamental philosophy of the study is basically based on matrices. What gets measured gets done. That's the fundamental philosophy, right, of the study itself. And that's the most toughest thing, right? We all want to do things, but when we ask people to actually sort of make those records, right, track data, measure data, then it becomes the most difficult thing. Jennifer, so how do you do this in terms of because you also just not one person, right? Ultimately, you need the support of the entire team, in fact, the entire organization to make it happen. So Jennifer, how do you do that at EY in terms of year on? Because EY has been participating in the study for almost 6 years now, 6 years, right? And you have to do it year on year. So how do you do it, Jennifer?
I must say, Karthik, you don't make it easy. I think, as an organization, we've definitely been very conscious of data. We've been conscious of the impact data can have and how it can even impact our storytelling, right? And so I think even before we began participating in the Best Companies for Women study, which was from the first year onwards, we had certain pieces of data that we would look at and track and measure, like, for example, representation of women across ranks, across geographies, all of that. And we would track and measure hiring, attrition, promo velocity. So those pieces were there. But I think over the 6 years, as our understanding of DE&I has evolved, so has the way we capture, measure progress and data as well, right? Just to give you a simple example, I think 10 years ago, when we talked about gender data and matrices, it was a simple binary, men and women. But now with our understanding being, having grown so much and evolved so much and still evolving, we understand the lens that we need to apply when we're looking at all of this. So I think we have a data analytics team that really helps us pull all of this together. And the reason I said you don't make it easy is because one, the study is exhaustive, like it looks at elements we would not have thought about otherwise. And it takes time. Like usually we find ourselves working on this for, about a month or so. But I think at the end of the day, it's really, giving us those data points to be able to look back and take back and build and strengthen our business case. Because it helps us, when we go to leaders, we talk about data, we talk about why we need, to work on certain goals. Data helps. It helps us measure impact when we use storytelling as an approach. It helps us measure progress. And I think what the application also does is, or has done for us, is it's helped us broaden some of the, or rather broaden the scope of the data that we've tracked and measured. As a firm, EY, like I was saying, we're very conscious about data. We have our own, global matrices, a tracker that we ourselves do. But this exhaustive nature of the Best Companies for Women study has helped us use some of this to set our goals when it comes to our vision, strategy, and execution for our DE&I at EYTDS.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. In fact, as much as the application is probably helping companies, we actually also learn from companies like EY, like, Citi, Target, and MasterCard. Some of the things that you do, the unique ones that we do, we'd sort of look at it and say, okay, is this something that we could actually become a best practice? Is this something that other companies can follow? I think we learn from you. That is what is reflected in the study. And I think that's a collaborative work that we actually spoke about, Jennifer. So thank you for a great response. Priyanka, I would just like to ask you a very simple straight question. According to you, what it would take to be the best companies for women, Priyanka?
Yeah. Well, I think reducing unconscious bias and increasing diversity, is a fundamental part of engaging the best talent for teams in any organization, Karthik, to prepare for the future of our industry. Any organization, I think, that invests in talent and culture and considers it as top priority, appreciating that their competitive advantage is their people and that truly qualifies. I think that organization truly qualifies to be the best company for women. Their commitment to building and maintaining a workplace that is diverse should be strong, and inclusivity is, not only to our values, but it's key to our winning strategy, right? Women-friendly policy. Let me start with a few checklists of stuff that I know the best company for women employees should have. I think women-friendly policies, flexibility is the primary one that really comes to my mind. I'm a recruiter, and as I recruit, attraction strategy is key to me. So if I don't have, friendly policies and procedures, then my attraction policy my attraction methodology fails. So that is primary, that you have to have an inclusive environment where the women-friendly policies and procedures are enforced. Environment of learning and development to encourage personal and professional aspirations of women employees, very important. We should not be looking at, a glove fit, a 10 on 10 skill match when it comes to women employees. We should be ready to invest in any skill gap and make sure that we're making them future ready in terms of any role that they aspire for and they may not be ready for today. I think I've seen that as a major attraction. Safety at workplace, very important, both physical and psychological. We keep talking about safety at workplace from a physical standpoint, but I think the dignity, the honor of a woman and her psychological safety is of paramount importance. You all have heard of POSH, policy on sexual harassment, and that is something that I've seen the best companies to be following with a lot of detail. Not recently, I think a big phenomena is ESG. We know what is environmental social governance. However, the social part of it is very, diversity close. And I think ESG policy is something that every organization is adopting, where the social aspect of very fair recruitment practices, where meritocracy matters, is taken into consideration. If you pack all of this into one and an organization, has all these tenets, I think it makes it one of the best places for women employees to work for.
Thank you, Priyanka. I think you brought this interesting, that ESG. Today it's becoming very important that, the diversity is actually represented in all the E, S, and G, right? Just not in the S part of it is ESG in various dimensions, right? In terms of diversity of the workplace, when you even talk about the environment aspect of it. Now, how do you appreciate the diversity that is there outside? And the diversity does not be limited to people, humans, right? It is about the nature, the animal world, and how organizations are really going to impact that. And also from the governance aspect of it, right? I think it's a beautiful point that you brought out, Priyanka. Sorry, I think I have to jump to Jennifer. I just got a message from Jennifer. There's something she has to leave at 5, some urgent work that has come. So before she leaves, I thought we should get one response from Jennifer. Jennifer, and I think I just want to stick to continue on what Priyanka spoke about, the policies and practices. Could you share the kind of enablers that provided EY from an aspect of diversity, from an aspect of empowering your women employees to actually just not continue, but also progress into leadership roles? Jennifer, please, if you can share a few thoughts before you leave.
Thank you so much, Karthik, and thank you for accommodating my request. And apologies that I have to leave a little early. I personally am a firm believer in enablers. I think it addresses the equity part of the acronym that we've been talking about, right? We recognize that everyone doesn't have the same starting points. And so I think enablers is a great way to bring in that amount of equity that we can, at least from a structural perspective, from a societal perspective, that we can offer to our women. And I'll just give you a couple of quick examples, things that we did, especially when the pandemic first started. And I'm sure a lot of organizations have done similar stuff, but what really worked for us is when we started going or heading into the pandemic in India, we had to stop, take a step back, and look at the cohorts within the organizations that were getting impacted. I mean, everyone got impacted, no doubt, but some more than others, right? And there's a lot of data and research in the last couple of years that shows us that. I mean, very early on, we all heard about how the double shift or the double workload was impacting women, suddenly going from having one full-time job to almost having 3 full-time jobs, where women were doing their work, they were doing the majority or the chunk of the household work and homeschooling their kids, right? And so that was one piece of it. Another cohort that we really focused on and had conversations with was persons with disabilities. Some of them didn't have the accessibility they needed, whether it was accessibility in terms of infrastructure or information as well, right? When you look at a work from home setup. Another cohort we looked at was persons who identified as LGBT+. Some of them, work was a safe space. They were out at work, their support systems were at work. They weren't out at home, and suddenly to be confined in that space with people that they were not out to, and they couldn't be their full selves. And so we looked at some of these, we did a lot of focus group discussions, but I just want to talk about maybe a couple of things that we did, especially for our women. Is one was to look at virtual childcare. You know, the daycares, the entire, that system was taken away, that support system was taken away as we went into the lockdown. And so we looked at how to bring in some amount of support and relief, just in terms of time, if not anything else, to free up a little bit of time for our women. So we provided virtual childcare platforms and other options for our women to look at. In fact, I remember we did sessions as well for our women. Some of the sessions were around, how do you negotiate with your spouse to ask for a shared workload, you know, and you know, for some of us, maybe, you know, if you look at it within your own context, like my own context, I perhaps didn't need it, but from the feedback we got, a lot of women did, and they benefited from that. Just that conversation, that's that spark to say, you can have these conversations. Given that a lot of women live within a joint family context as well, right? The family construct. And so just, I think, addressing things from that point of view, coming in from a lens of empathy, really helped us. And the other thing that we looked at was domestic violence, because suddenly we were telling women, work from home. Or not just women, I know it's not a gender issue. It's domestic violence it's gender agnostic. But for a lot of people, we were saying, now you work from home 24 hours, you're in a house, in a situation, confined with someone who perhaps abuses you, right? And so that safety net was again taken away for some of them. So we actually introduced a policy that addressed this a little bit, to give them a little bit of support. And like I was saying, I think it just came from a place of empathy. But for our women, it was something that they needed. We've heard stories of how this helped retain some of our women as well. And I mean, that wasn't the objective, but that was one of the impact that we experienced. Thanks, Karthik.
No, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much for your time. Preeti, one of the things that I wanted to sort of check with you, and this is in continuation to what actually Priyanka and Jennifer spoke about, in terms of creating those policies and practices, right? And creating that environment. Now, Preeti, I think this is where I also want to check with you about the importance of benchmarking, right? Because it really helps you to make those decisions, right? Because when you start looking at, you're just not looking at from the diversity numbers, you're also looking at various things, right? Now, how do you think the benchmarking through the participation in the best company studies have really helped you to look at in a much more strategical way of your entire approach, Preeti?
Thank you, Karthik. I mean, indeed, we've been partnering with Avtar, or now their new name, for a while, and it has been immensely helpful. For us at MasterCard, inclusion starts at the top. So we do have a Global Inclusion Council that kind of helps us guide our collective vision to cultivate the culture of inclusion and bring the entire MasterCard together. And that kind of creates a workplace that welcomes everybody, which is men, women, and the other gender as well. So a lot of policies and practices that we put in place, while they are very women focused, that Priyanka touched upon, that they have to be women friendly policies. I think we're also looking at that. One of the panelists also spoke about beyond gender, which is the third gender, the LGBTQ community. Now, coming back to the benchmarking process, Karthik, we understand that even as journey of participation has been evolving over a period of time. So one is the data and statistics that we kind of produce for our own Global Inclusion Council, or India's Gender Steerco Committee that we represent, the information, how has been our progress. But participating in the studies and the benchmarking exercise with your firm has certainly helped us get a new perspective as to what are the areas that some of the other companies are working on that we could leverage on. And to ensure that people have fair and equal path for success is something that we were able to really get some ideas and commitments towards. To be specifically, it's a great platform where, and one of the panelists said that what gets measured gets done. And the statistics and the numbers that kind of help us really drive the agenda and next level. So to be specific here, MasterCard, today we have a women representation of 40% globally, and India is inching towards 34-35%. That's really helping us drive that as an agenda. For benchmarking and recording what we're doing, women at MasterCard earn $1 to every $1 men earn, so which is like an equity, right? When they're doing the same role at the global scale. When you're measuring, you have the statistics and data in front of you, and those are the investments that kind of reap benefit that you are able to showcase in terms of the stakeholders that we are kind of working with. Last but not the least, because we're very passionate about diversity and inclusion beyond the workplace, we've been investing into one of the signature programs called Girls for Tech, which was launched 2014. And it has touched about 1.5 million girls across the globe in 44 countries to be specific. But 2021, we were still hybrid under lockdown and everything else. We focused towards educating or inspiring 100,000 girls in India in tier 2 and tier 3 cities to pursue STEM as an education, as a career, And that's been has been super successful in terms of our driving. So in summary, Kartik, the question that you said, benchmarking and really tabling the matrices have kind of helped drive the agenda to the next level, and also helps us reflect where we were in the previous years and what we have moved the needle, and kind of helps us put the very objective priorities and the strategies in place so that we could dial up the agenda for the next subsequent couple of quarters. So that's all I'd like to add, Kartik.
Yeah, thank you, Preeti. I think the entire aspect of benchmarking and we have had such tremendous response from the companies that which participate and how it really helps them. And this is where I would like to bring Shanti. Shanti is a person that we work with very closely, specifically with Target, in terms of as part of the study. And actually, we would love to hear from you, Shanti, in terms of the impact, right, that the best companies of study has helped Target, and specifically you as the diversity leader at Target, Shanti. Please give your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. How much time do you have, Kartik?
No, we have time. I think if you can stick to this 2-3 minutes thing, then we'll have come back again, Shanti.
Because it's a long list, right? Like Jennifer said, your data is robust, it's exhaustive, it takes time and commitment to fill that. Where it has helped is, I will say, taking a step back and looking at the overall picture holistically. My purpose is to advance and retain women, make it more inclusive for women, at Target in India. But is my strategy and is my action very directly aligned to that purpose? Am I putting the money where I need to put? Am I putting the accountability on the right set of leaders? Am I following up with the right set of leaders on the accountability? Am I setting up an ecosystem for women to thrive within the workplace? It's not just about bringing them, like I said, you have to engage with them. You have to engage with them meaningfully so that they grow in their career, right? So I think that's where the partnership with Avtar has helped, taking a step back, pausing and looking at the bigger picture. And also it gave us a good way to holistically look at policies, practices, in service of building an inclusive culture. They go hand in hand, and it's not just about the paperwork of the policies, how that gets administered, or how you build awareness around those policies for women or for all genders and for all dimensions of difference. I think those are a couple of places where BCWI played a big role. Sometimes if I even think about the robust data points that are collected, right? I know Divya and Anju do a fabulous job of bringing the AI into the data, right? A question that probably I have answered on recruitment also gets answered on a different theme around culture, because you're seeing the alignment of the story, the alignment of one data point matching the result of the other policy or practice. So those dimensions is something that BCWI has helped us see clearly through that intersection, through that holistic approach.
Oh, thank you. I think Divya and Anju would love to hear that they are there on this the session today. They'll be very happy to hear from this from you, Shanti. Thank you so much for your kind words. Actually, Priyanka, from your experience, right, and Citi as being one of the top 10 companies also. Can you actually highlight some key initiatives that we're really doing, Priyanka, to attract talent specifically, Priyanka?
Right. Thanks for asking me this. It gives me an opportunity to showcase what all Citi is doing. Look, reducing unconscious bias and increasing diversity is a very fundamental part of engaging in the best talent for our teams in Citi as we are preparing for the future of the industry. So we also believe, Kartik, that the change trickles down from the tops. And so Citi has a policy on a diversity representation target, which is globally set out to be for mid and senior levels at 40% and 50% across grades. So, that is something that we've been committed to. And obviously our talent acquisition practices or our talent acquisition targets is, commensurate to that. So given that mandate and given that target, and given the fact that we have really seen a lot of merit in having a diverse workforce for the organization. The year-on-year goal has been set to be getting incremental by 2% every year. And that 2% globally for a giant like a city is huge hiring effort, if you will. The talent attraction strategy has to be commensurate to that. Over and above, I think, talking about women-friendly policies, benefits, etc., I think what really keeps us very strong on our attraction strategy is the nature of the business and the fact that when we welcome women back, especially women who are returnees, we don't ask them why did you take a break? And if you want to come back, we don't talk about our roles upfront. What we talk about is what is the skill that you bring to the table, and we try how do we match and marry that to the opportunities available in cities. So I think that has been very successful. Just throwing some stats at you, Karthik. Year on year, I think for the last 2 years, we have kept to about 45% across grades hiring from a diversity standpoint. 45% is decent across grades. And mid to senior level, we are anywhere between 35 to 39% with an aspiration of hitting 40%. So this is the stats should tell you that our attraction strategy is pretty stable. From times, I think earlier than 2001, when we started focusing on D&I really. We had women leadership programs, talent reviews, maternity leaves, benefits, all of that was there. But I think there has been continuous effort in making sure that our strands expand. So gender, generations, LGBTQ, and social abilities is where we put our focus on. You all must have heard about Citi getting into a pay equity phase between 2016 and 18, which was a huge exercise. I think globally it was talked about, where we did a pay parity exercise and brought women employees to at parity with our male employees as well. So that was a big one, and I continue to talk about it proudly, Karthik. Not to mention, there is a very smart way of recruiting, which is called 2+2 in Citi. So when we talk about 2+2, there's not a single role in Citi that does not have more than 2 diverse candidates and not more than 2 diverse panelists. So the 2+2 discipline has really shown great results in terms of the stats that I was throwing at you earlier, because 2 female panelists, I think, inspires a lot of confidence in women employees or other candidates as well, that they will get a fair, ear. I can keep going on and on in terms of the awareness and sensitization sessions that we have. There are a plethora of them. I think the maternity policy is one of its kind with 26 weeks plus 1 month over and above that. We are very proud of the fact that we are strongly aligned to the EEO policy. From a maternity benefit Act 2017 perspective, I think the creche requirement is something which is very unique that Citi offers to all the women employees, and also allowing female employees to be working past 9:30 p.m. So long as we are able to provide safe transportation from the work site to the residence is something that Citi has adopted well as well. So that is creating a lot of I think stickiness for women employees for us. From a TA perspective, there has been no better time than now for Citi in terms of attracting diverse talent all across the strands, the 4 strands that I mentioned just with that.
Yeah, thank you, Priyanka. In terms of the work that is really happening now, and I just want to go into topics now beyond the workplace, right? I think the diversity is now impacting the external environment as well. And Shanti, this is where I would like to ask you about. There's a lot of work I think done, I'm sure, in many other organizations as well, but specifically at Target, you're focusing on that supply diversity part of it, Shanti, right? And if you could really share some perspectives on that, how it is impacting your overall sort of an inclusion strategy, Shanti.
Absolutely. Karthik, when it comes to community, supplier diversity was one very straightforward place, and helping women entrepreneurs, companies owned by persons with disability, companies owned by the LGBTQ community, that we wanted to make an intentional difference in. So looking at our vendor pool, who we are doing business with, and also making that equitable for diverse suppliers, for women, entrepreneurs, was something that was a reflection of what diversity meant to us within Target. Not just supplier diversity, there are 2 other programs, Karthik, that I'd like to mention. One is called Target Udaan, which is specifically training persons with disabilities to get into the workforce. We spend about 6 to 7 months of our team member time helping a pool of differently abled candidates, teaching them basics of tools that they will need to use at workplace, communication, interviewing skills. The intent is how can they get independent and get into the workforce, whether at Target or outside of Target. We were happy to absorb some of them within Target, but a lot more outside also. And the second program is called Target Upcurve, which is for young girls in STEM, catching them early on so that they are intentional about their career. Upcurve is also a training program that our technologists give to the young girls in STEM, so that even before they complete their degree, they have an offer letter in hand, which does a lot to their confidence to stay in the workforce, to stay within the STEM programs. So those two, apart from supply diversity, have been contributions to beyond the teams and the organization and the community.
Yeah, thank you, Shanti. I think the supply diversity is still not taken off in India, right? There are only few companies, and that is going to be very important area that we can actually create an impact.
Yes.
For women, for different communities, just not for women as well. In terms of building capability, building in terms of giving them opportunities, right? And this is where my next question is to Preeti. I think financial inclusion is very important for you, right? And that's something close to your heart, Preeti. I think there is some work that is also happening at MasterCard in terms of financial inclusion. So we'd love to hear from you, Preeti, and what is happening in that space as well.
Yeah, certainly. We'll be more than happy to talk more about it, Karthik. So for us, the financial inclusion has been, as I spoke about, the three pillars around with people, which is people, our MasterCard people, or the society and the market at large. But from a financial inclusion perspective, as I just spoke about, that we've committed 250 crores rupees over the next 5 years to really reboot and energize the Indian SMEs. And we're targeting the women entrepreneurs, the small and medium enterprise segment, where they're running Kirana. So we're calling it Project Kirana for Women, where we are helping the women who are running small businesses by putting an effort, and there's a team that works, we're partnering with Niti Aayog and also the Traders Association for investing in the growing in the knowledge of digital payments as to how can you make some digital payments, how can you really go ahead and how can you take credit and take online and offline efforts in terms of safe and secure transactions, and drive inclusive merchants that are kind of running Kirana store to really have partnership with the banks that they can get some loans or credit for really pulling in their, the merchandise that they kind of are selling. And there's a proper training program, we're calling it Digital Saksham, that we're kind of running for our entrepreneurs to really understand what all they can leverage. So it's called, so from a small and medium-sized enterprise, making them aware of the financial tools, the digital payment platforms, how do they take credit from the banks, how do they manage their finances, manage their books of accounts, and how they can really go to the banking. And this is all as part of the program that we're running it together. And that's what we're working very closely with. So this is one of the programs. We're working with various NGOs. To be specific, we're working with Mandeshi Foundation that kind of is helping us in the rural areas where we kind of bringing awareness on the financial aspects of it, dealing with the finances, because, while we all know that women make a large part of decisions as far as everyday expenditures are concerned. So it's all not about the entrepreneur as women, but as a normal homemaker, that she's aware of that what is that, how will she do the accounting, and how she should be very aware of that what are the platforms that are available to her to really make some of those investments and also leverage the platforms that are available to us, I think.
Sorry, thank you, Preeti. I think it's good to know that we will have more women leaders, just not women leaders, women entrepreneurs at the end of the day. I think that is something that we all need, because more women entrepreneurs, we are able to then create more opportunities, hopefully for women, and more women leaders emerge, from women entrepreneurial ventures. So I think kudos to MasterCard for doing such good work in this particular space. Priyanka, I would like to really ask you one sort of a personal question in a sense. As a women leader, I think you have had this tremendous journey. Today, you also lead the talent acquisition for South Asia, if I'm right. And so what is that you would like to share? This is the Women's History Month, right? We are celebrating the International Women's Day right throughout, just not on the March 8th. But what would you like to share to people out there? And I think it's just not the women, but to each one of us. What are your thoughts, Priyanka? Anything that you would love to share?
Certainly, the advantage of having gray hair and over 2 decades of work experience is that you can eloquently talk about, your personal experience and the lived experience. I'll talk about myself. So having, gone through continents and cultures in the past over 2 decades, there have been a few learnings. I was a young mom of two girls, and I had to do responsible parenting. At the same time, I was struggling, in terms of finding my place in the professional world as well. I realized very early in my career, Karthik, that I don't have to stand behind the garb of diversity. I don't want empathy. I don't want inclusion. I don't want accommodating me just because I'm a woman. So very early, I realized that I have to stand up for myself. I have to keep upskilling myself and continue to make myself relevant. So this is, this purpose has always kept me afloat, I guess, in my personal and professional life. The other part is, it was extremely important for me to role model in front of my girls because I knew that, they were going to be the future women, professionals. And I have grown them very sensibly, very responsibly. Today, I'm a very proud mom of two very accomplished daughters, both of them working for good marquee organizations, and they have created their own space. So responsible parenting together with, balancing my professional life, set me on a purpose, both on the personal and professional front, which was not backed with empathy and the DNI card that I hold as a woman. So that is something that has held very strong with me. I'm very proud to be, the gender that I am. And I've always advocated myself as a very strong woman in the industry, never told myself that you're any weak. Just one thing I'd like to tell out to all the women and everybody in the audience. Generally, you as a woman, you talk about life events and roadblocks and, challenges that you have to overcome. I would tell you something in my career, again, lived experience. Whenever there was a roadblock, the roadblock was me, myself. It was never because of an organization. It was never because of a senior. It was never because of a role. It was never because I was not included. It's just because I didn't have the courage to say, yes, I can do it. And when I realized that Priyanka was the roadblock for Priyanka, I think I eliminated it very carefully. And ever since, no role, no career change of mine, no risk that I have taken has ever failed me because I have moved, domains, industries, organizations, as I said, continents, cultures, and every barrier that I had because of self is something that I kept overcoming. So please don't tell yourself that you're a woman and you need to be accommodated. I keep saying this to everybody. As I let you go, Karthik, the day we stop talking about DNI, the day we stop putting a spotlight on DNI is a day that I personally wait for, so that it becomes a DNA thing for us. We don't have to talk about it. You don't have to spotlight it. Is that not a given?
Yeah, Priyanka. So I think that's a great point. Then you are going to put us out of business if you're going to stop talking about DNI. But I think that's all we are actually working through, in honesty. We are all working towards that particular goal where we are really able to, this becomes not automatic. It becomes atmost natural, for us, and not to do all these various interventions. Thank you for those wonderful insights, Priyanka. Shanti, I would like to go to, in continuation to what Priyanka said. She spoke about some amazing attitudes, that you really need to have the courage, right? It's ultimately up to you, to overcome some of your own self-limiting biases. But at the end of the day, right? Yes, there could be, yes, we have role models like Priyanka, like Preeti, Shanti, and Jennifer, but you still, I think there is still support needed. But how do you do this at Target to ensure to your women colleagues at Target, Shanti? What do you do to have this kind of a belief, the confidence and the aspiration, Shanti?
Yeah. Karthik, I think one simple thing, but also can be difficult, listening. listening to what the women are saying and what they are not saying. Both of it are important. So making those forums, creating those moments where you can listen to what your women team members are experiencing, are wanting, are seeking help for, I think that becomes very, very critical, because that flows into how you want to think about new policies, new practices, new benefits that you want to get in. So it all starts from a place of listening. And I think the second thing is also finding your support system and finding your tribe within the organization is important. When you lean into that one person or two people who can keep you honest to who you are, that goes a long way in how you see your career, how you learn new things, and how you shape up new things. So those will be the two things.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Shanti. So my question to Preeti. Preeti, if you could share the 3 takeaways that you had, in this last 6 years that you're actually, I would call it the aha moment, Preeti, right?
Yeah.
Anything that you would like to share in the last 6 years of being part of the study?
Yeah, it's very difficult, Karthik, to really say about one aha moment. I'd like to call about a few things together, because it's been a journey that we've embarked with Avtar in terms of our benchmarking process and learning about how can we drive that as an agenda of DEI in the organization, and specifically talking about women as our priority segment in addition to the other genders that we have been doing. So for us, the aha moment was that we learned about the measuring of whole thing, the data and the statistics, that the way that Avtar kind of puts that study to really understand and takes out the best practices that we have put together. So we were like surprised when we started the journey, while we have global moments, but then for us was like, when we started doing the study, we said, wow, we've kind of done a couple of things in each year that we wrote the report, we had the submission. So that was like a aha moment, saying, oh, wow, we've done a couple of things that are extraordinary. And that was like really amazing. Second thing was on the year-on-year journey, when the statistics kind of move, we do retreat in some data of the previous year. We made some great progress in terms of the new initiative that we're running. And I'd like to talk about a couple of initiatives that we kind of really created. So while I spoke about, women at Mastercard earn $1 to every $1 as men, etc. I think for us, it was the biggest aha moment when we when we started the whole journey back in 2017, 2018 was like, we were about in sub 20%, 20+%, 21, 20, 20, 20, 21% of diversity ratios. And today, after measuring and participating in these studies with Avtar and learning of the best practices from other companies, that we kind of put in place some of the improvements into it. Today, we are touching about 32 to 34 to 35% of diversity. And that's really gives me a lot of moment of proud to see that we've come a long way, and we still have a long way to go. I do agree that diversity, equity, and inclusion should be our way of life, but it does requires a village. It takes a village to really get that whole thing together, and it requires a tone from the top. I think we're lucky as that Mastercard to have all of that, and we're very, very hopeful that soon we will touch our global benchmark, where globally we are 40% of workforce as women, and India touches that mark very soon, is what we are really aspiring to. And Avtar has been super helpful in driving us that agenda. Thank you, Karthik.
No, thank you, Preeti. I'm so delighted that you could really make this huge 10% movement in the last 4 or 5 years or 3 or 4 years. I think that's really an amazing journey. We have an interesting question, but it's a question. It's actually I would say outside the industry that you're in, but I'm sure all the experiences that you have. The question is, how can you attract more women into an industry that is male dominated, like the automobile? Priyanka, would you like to take a shot at that, from the talent acquisition space, specifically, Priyanka?
Why should domain be any limitation? Why would you talk about automobile? Why would you talk about farming? Why would you talk about
that is, sorry, just a question from one of the
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm responding in that manner. I'm
Yes,
not telling
please.
you.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? It should be domain agnostic. I think talent is talent across domains, across industries, right? The question was on automobile, right?
Yeah. So how do you have more sort of women in
Yeah.
the male dominated industry like automobile?
I have not worked in that sector, so I
Yeah.
don't know what the attraction practices over there is. But having worked through, some of the different domains, I can tell you one thing: the domain should not be a limitation. By virtue of qualification, if you have qualified in that area, that immediately qualifies you to be working in that industry and in that domain is one. Secondly, if you have acquired skills as well and an understanding of the domain through studies or research, then, especially technology. I don't think technology, Java is different for automobile industry or banking or retail and marketing, right? So I think your skill is what is going to matter. Domain agnostic, and why would you talk about a domain specific? Because I don't think automobile industry is male dominated. You give me a cue to go and research what is the DRG percentage over there, and maybe my next movement should be to that industry.
That's I think a great way to respond, Priyanka. I think the automobile industry, I think, will do wonders with you there. and city, I think, will be the loser.
And partnership with Avtar. So you said a bit back, Karthik, that we're going to shut business. Avtar would never shut business. What happens to people like us, organizations like us? We look forward to your partnership.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Indeed.
Priyanka. Preeti or Shanti, anything that you would like to share about the specific question?
Yeah, I was actually typing it out, so I'll just share it. I agree with Priyanka. Domain should not dictate how the talent pool looks like. If there is talent, it should just flow in, right? And Vidya, I really hope we talk about more dimensions in the future, not just gender. We will get there one step at a time as an economy, right? As India as a country. My first tip will be do everything that you can to retain the existing talent pool within that domain. Invest in them intentionally and leverage them to refer more women into that industry. That will be my one tip. My second tip would also be do some research on what's stopping women to get into that organization or get into that industry. Is it the safety? Is it the way things are set up? Is it just physical safety? Financial safety? Is there education available for that industry for women? Are there colleges that provide that education? Go to the grassroots level of campuses that help you get that talent, and seek for more colleges that maybe have more pool of women. Hold yourself accountable to build that pipeline from the start, so that you have more to work with over the years. And this is not something, Vidya, that you can fix within 1 or 2 years. It's going to take time. It's going to help you, think a long-term strategy versus just, 1 or 2 year strategy. And your leadership has to have that buy-in. So I will change my third tip to the first tip: get the buy-in from your leadership to invest in women in that domain.
Yeah. No, I think, Shanti, I share a very similar view on this. My take on this is that we have to create a talent pipeline. That's the most important thing, because there is this, again, some sort of a bias, right? And this is all about break the bias. So we really need to break the bias. Women's career can be so much opportunities that are there. It could be multi-dimensional. It cannot be just looking at finance as a career or a marketing as a career or IT as a career. But today, I think there are so many opportunities. But the sad part of it is that really needs to be tapped in at the school and the college level. If you miss it out, they have already chosen their stream, they have chosen their education. Even if one good part of it is, in India, I think there is a very high amount of women pursuing actually STEM as a career. But at the end of the day, they get into the IT, right? They don't look at the other aspects of engineering, like your production, your mechanical, your civil, their instrumentation. They really don't look at that. And I think we really need to work with the colleges and institutions, and that's the only way that we're able to create the talent pipeline. I think we are actually overshot by time by 5 minutes. It was a great discussion, wonderful thoughts about the study, about the participation study, the impact that it has had, but also some amazing work that is done by each of the company, the Target, Citi, MasterCard, and UI. I think we're all going to be rich in terms of the insights, in terms of how do you really approach the entire aspect of diversity. And just my final question to you, I just want to touch upon the aspect of break the bias. If there is one bias that each one of you would like to break, it's not for you, it could be for anyone. What would that be? In a very quick short, what would the bias that you would like each one of you would like see to break that bias? One bias. It's okay if you don't have that, but if there is something that you like to see, a bias broken.
I'll go first on this one. Sorry, Shanti, if I interrupted. I think, this perception of women can't stretch. Be it, timing, be it stressful environment, they can't be stress tested. My messaging out there to everybody is try us out in terms of stress testing. I think we come out with flying colors. So that is one bias I really would like to bust. And every day, it's my endeavor from my personal experience perspective that I showcase the fact there's no difference really in the output or the stress management that we go through. So that is one bias I consciously want to bust. It's terrible when somebody wants to come and tell me, you know what, Priyanka, it's okay. I know it's beyond 10:30. I'm like, so what? So
yeah. Thank you. Preeti, over to you.
I'd like to add the mobility part of it. And this is unconscious bias. And there's a comment that Manisha Tavde says. I mean, I've had situations where we have brilliant woman candidate, internal candidate, and this requires a regional or a global role, requires an individual to travel, or she has a family. So I don't know how she'll be able to travel across different geographies, or will she really be moving her across? And there are enough number of examples within MasterCard, that there are women leaders who are traveling and they're doing it. So mobility is one that, as women, we know how to manage our personal and professional stuff. We know how to balance well. And it's been a journey. We all have learned it over a period of time. I'd like to break the bias of that women are not mobile and they're not agile. We are very mobile and very agile. We'll take the challenge head on, give us that challenge and give the women colleagues that challenge.
Thank you so much, Preeti. I think hopefully we can break that bias of mobility right soon enough. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Shanti, your thoughts, anything that you would like to see broken?
+1 to Priyanka, +1 to Preeti. I think the important aspect that both of them have covered is stop making assumptions for women, let them make their own decisions, right? I think that's fabulous. One bias that has been on my mind since we are talking a lot more about hybrid and future of work and how that will look at is proximity bias. Don't assume that who you're seeing in office is the only people that you have to invest in. Who you're not seeing, who are working from home, who are not present physically at office, don't exclude them in your talent conversations. And more often than not, if that is women, don't miss out on reaching out. So that proximity bias is actually something on my mind as we think about future of work.
Thank you. I think it's becoming very relevant today and highly important with the hybrid working, remote working, work from home, right? It's a great point. So thanks everyone. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing some beautiful thoughts. Again, some of you also shared your vision in terms of the bias that needs to be broken. Thank you so much for your time. Look forward to connecting with you again sometime soon. Thanks once again. Thank you so much.